The desert of Kareen 9 was quiet, too quiet. Only the sound of the wind moved through the endless red sand. The sun burned low in the sky, and the air shimmered like fire. Elias Vorn, a repair engineer living alone in an outpost far from the cities, was fixing a broken drone near a dune ridge. His metal tools clicked and hissed, and his visor reflected the orange sky. He was tired. He had been alone for almost 6 months, working and surviving on scraps of food and water deliveries that came once a week. He liked silence, but that day the silence changed. A deep rumble rolled across the desert. A sandstorm was coming. The scanners on his wrist beeped fast. Wind rose, throwing red dust into the air. Elias grabbed his gear, ready to head back to the shelter dome. But then, he saw something. Through the thick wall of dust, a figure moved, small, slow, and stumbling. At first he thought it was a broken machine wandering off course, but then he saw arms, legs, and bare feet dragging through the sand. "Is that a person?" Elias whispered to himself. The wind screamed louder. The storm hit him hard, pushing against his suit. Visibility dropped to nothing. He turned on his headlamp and ran toward the figure. Each step sank deep into the sand. When he reached her, he froze. It was a girl. She looked young, maybe in her 20s, but her skin was smooth and pale, almost shining under the stormlight. There was no hair on her head or body, not even eyebrows. Her feet were cut and bleeding. And her eyes. Her eyes glowed faint gray like the color of storm clouds. She didn't speak. She didn't even seem to breathe. Elias wrapped his coat around her and carried her through the storm. The wind howled and sand hit his helmet like bullets. He struggled to reach the dome before the airlock shut down. Inside, the lights flickered as he dropped her on the soft med bed. His hands shook while removing his helmet. The storm screamed outside, but in here there was only silence again. A heavy, strange silence. The girl's skin felt cold, almost too cold. Elias scanned her with a handheld medical device. The screen flashed red. No DNA record found, no ID tag, no life signature recognized. "What the hell?" he muttered. He turned on the heater and covered her with a thermal blanket. Slowly, she opened her eyes. For a moment, they reflected the lights above like mirrors. "Can you hear me?" Elias asked gently. She just stared at him. Not scared, not calm, just empty. He gave her a sip of water. She looked at it like she didn't understand what it was. Then with shaking hands, she drank. Her voice was soft, broken. "Cold." Elias blinked. She spoke. It was the only word she said, but it was human. "Okay," he said. "You're safe now." He checked her vitals again, heart rate slow but stable. He sighed in relief. Whoever she was, she needed rest. While she slept, he studied the data. No record in the planetary network. Not even a match in the human database, nothing. It was like she didn't exist. Later that night, the storm grew worse. Elias sat near her, listening to the wind hitting the dome. He couldn't stop looking at her. Something about her face felt familiar, though he was sure he had never seen her before. Her lips moved while she dreamed. Soft, trembling sounds came out. Not words, just pain. Elias leaned closer. "Who are you?" he whispered. Her eyelids fluttered open. Slowly, she turned her head toward him. And then, with a fragile voice, she spoke 2 words that froze him. "I forgot." Elias frowned. "You forgot?" She nodded weakly. "No name, no memory." The lights flickered again, and for a second her eyes glowed brighter. A faint silver light, pulsing like data. Elias stepped back, shocked. "What are you?" he whispered, her gaze locked on his. She looked almost afraid. Then, with a voice so low it was almost a breath, she said, "Forgotten." The word echoed in the dome, blending with the sound of the storm outside. Elias felt a cold chill in his chest. Forgotten? What did she mean? He tried to calm himself. "You've been through a lot," he said gently. "Rest, we'll talk when you're stronger." She closed her eyes again. Her breathing steadied, but faint light still glowed under her skin, like small rivers of silver running beneath her flesh. Elias could see it through the blanket. Outside, lightning flashed across the dunes. Inside, Elias sat alone beside the strange girl with no name, no hair, and no past. He didn't know yet. But this night, on a dying world, was the beginning of something that would change humanity forever. And somewhere in the storm, a faint voice echoed in the wind, mechanical, Distant searching. Unit 7, respond. Subject Eve located. Elias looked toward the window, his heart pounding. He whispered, "What have I just brought into my home?" The storm answered with thunder. Morning came slow on Careen 9. The storm had passed, leaving behind a red, dusty world that looked half dead. The sky was pale and cracked with dry clouds. Inside the dome, Elias Vorn sat beside the strange girl, watching her sleep under a weak lamplight. She looked human, yet not. Her skin was so smooth that it caught the light like glass. No scars, no pores, no marks. Just perfect cold skin. Elias couldn't shake the feeling that she was not born but made. He whispered to himself, "What are you?" The girl stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. Her gray eyes blinked, empty and lost. She looked around the room like she had never seen walls before. "You're awake," Elias said softly. "Can you tell me your name?" She shook her head. "No name." Her voice was quiet but strange and like she was learning how to use it. Elias sighed. "You must be freezing. Come on, you need a bath. You're covered in dust and blood." He led her to the small washroom beside the control deck. The room was metal, old, and filled with the hum of recycled water pumps. Steam drifted up as warm water began to fill the tub. The girl stepped close, staring at the water as if it was something alien. "It's okay," Elias said gently. "It's just water. It'll help you feel better." She nodded, slow and careful. She removed the blanket from her shoulders, revealing her pale, flawless body. Elias turned away, embarrassed, trying to give her privacy. But curiosity made him glance once more, and he saw thin, glowing lines running along her back, fading in and out like light behind her skin. He froze. "What in the—" She stepped into the tub. The moment her skin touched the water, everything changed. A faint hum filled the room, deep and electric. The water shimmered, glowing faint silver. The girl gasped, her body shaking. The glowing lines under her skin grew brighter, spreading across her arms and neck like liquid fire. Elias rushed forward. "Hey, are you okay?" She didn't answer. Her eyes went wide, silver light bursting through them. She clutched her head and screamed. It wasn't a normal scream. It was full of pain, confusion, and memory. Images flickered across the room's reflective metal, like shadows of a story not meant to be seen. A white laboratory, machines, people in suits. Voices saying, "Erase her." "She remembers." Elias stumbled back, terrified. "What is happening to you?" The girl grabbed the edge of the tub, shaking violently. Tears rolled down her face, but the tears were bright, shining like drops of light. "Stop it. Please," Elias shouted, trying to pull her out. But when he touched her arm, he felt something inside her, like static running through his nerves. Flashes of someone else's thoughts. He saw flashes in his mind. A girl waking up in a cold pod. Doctors watching, her voice crying, "Where am I? What am I?" Then darkness. Elias fell to his knees, gasping. The girl had stopped screaming. The light under her skin dimmed and the water slowly turned clear again, though it shimmered faintly with silver dust. She was shaking, whispering something over and over. Elias leaned close. "They erased me. They erased me." Her voice cracked like a broken signal. "Who?" Elias asked softly, still breathless. "Who erased you?" She lifted her head, her gray eyes now calm but full of tears. "The Makers." Elias frowned. "Makers?" She looked around as if expecting someone to appear. "They made me. Then they wanted to unmake me." Her words hit him like a punch. He stared at her in disbelief. "You're saying someone built you?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "I was not supposed to wake up again." Elias tried to make sense of it. Was she a robot, a clone, something in between? But her eyes, her tears, they were too human. He helped her out of the tub, wrapping her in a towel. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Don't let them find me." He looked at her, this fragile, impossible being standing barefoot on the cold floor, and something deep inside him stirred. A mix of fear and pity. "I won't," he said finally. "You're safe here." But even as he said it, a faint tone beeped from his console in the other room. A transmission trying to break through the signal jammers. Elias turned his head, alarmed. "That's not possible." He ran to the console and opened the feed. Static filled the screen, then a voice, cold, mechanical. "Subject Eve detected. Signal confirmed. Begin retrieval." Elias's blood ran cold. He looked back toward the washroom. The girl was standing there, clutching her head, trembling. The silver light under her skin was glowing again, faint but steady. He whispered to himself, "They're coming for her." Outside, the wind began to rise again. The desert of Kareen 9 was waking up, and with it came danger. Elias didn't know who the makers were, but he knew one thing for sure. The girl he found in the sandstorm was not just lost. She was hunted, and now so was he. The next night on Kareen 9 was silent again, but not peaceful. Elias couldn't sleep. The girl's screams still echoed in his mind, mixed with that strange transmission. Subject Eve detected. He sat at his control desk, staring at the blinking message logs. Whoever sent that signal knew where she was. His outpost, and once invisible to every scanner, had been found. Across the room, the girl slept wrapped in a gray blanket. The glow beneath her skin had faded, leaving her looking almost human again. But Elias knew better now. She wasn't human, at least not completely. He turned on his old research terminal. The cracked screen flickered to life, showing dusty files from years ago. His work before he quit the Virion Syndicate. He had been an engineer there once before he learned what their biosynthesis experiments were really about. His hands trembled as he searched the archives. Most files were erased, but one fragment loaded. A single word appeared on the screen. Project Eve. Elias's heart stopped. He whispered, "No, it can't be," he remembered now. Project Eve was a secret program to merge human DNA with machine intelligence, creating a new kind of life. Perfect, controllable, and immortal. But the experiments failed. The test subjects broke down. Some went mad, others vanished. He thought it was all destroyed and shut down after the massacre in the lab. Yet here she was, sleeping right in front of him. Elias walked closer. The girl stirred, sensing his movement. She opened her eyes, confused. "Where am I?" "You're safe," Elias said softly, "but I think I know who you are." She sat up slowly. "Who?" He swallowed hard. "You're part of something called Project Eve. You were made, not born." She didn't react at first, just blinked, silent. Then after a long pause, she whispered, "Eve. That name. It hurts." Her hand went to her temple, and for a moment her eyes flashed silver again. Elias reached out. "Easy, don't push yourself." She looked up at him suddenly. "You know them, don't you?" "The makers." Elias hesitated. "I worked for them. A long time ago." The air between them grew heavy. Her gray eyes darkened. "Then you helped make me." Elias stepped back. "No, I didn't know what they were really doing. I left before..." She cut him off. "Before they erased us?" Her voice trembled. "Before they pulled the plugs and watched us scream?" Elias's chest tightened. He couldn't answer. The memory of that day flooded back. Alarms, gunshots, the sound of containment pods shattering. He had run away, ashamed and afraid. The girl stood, the blanket falling to her feet. The faint markings under her skin started to glow again. Soft blue light tracing lines up her arms and neck, forming a pattern like a circuit tree. Elias stared. Those markings. They're not random, are they? She looked at them too, her face sad. They are the code of my making. My skin remembers what my mind cannot. Elias's engineering instincts kicked in. He scanned the pattern with a portable sensor. The device beeped and displayed something impossible, a data signature. Each glowing line was a memory thread, part biological, part digital. He whispered, "You're a living machine." She shook her head softly. "Not machine. Not human, just wrong." "No," Elias said, voice firm now. "Not wrong. Alive." For the first time, she looked almost human, a faint smile breaking through her fear. But then the dome lights flickered again. The transmission alarm beeped, a new signal trying to connect. Elias quickly cut the power, but the girl winced, pressing her hands to her ears. "They're talking," she said quietly. "I can hear them." Elias froze. "You can hear the signal?" She nodded. "They call me a failed pattern. They want to delete me." Elias grabbed her shoulders. "You're not a pattern. You're a person." Her eyes filled with tears, real human tears this time. "Then why does it hurt to remember?" Elias didn't know what to say. He only knew that she didn't deserve to be hunted. Outside, a faint light crossed the horizon, the shadow of a ship entering atmosphere. He ran to the scanner. The reading was clear. Virion Syndicate vessel inbound. He turned back to her. "They're coming for you. We need to hide." The girl looked calm now, though her eyes still glowed faintly. "If they find me," she said softly, "they'll erase everything again. Even you." Elias clenched his fists. "They'll have to kill me first." The girl tilted her head, studying him like she was trying to understand why he cared. "You helped make me once," she said quietly. "Now you want to save me?" He nodded. "Maybe it's my turn to fix what I broke." The girl whispered something he barely heard. "Then you'll die for me." Elias didn't answer. He just looked at the sky, watching the approaching light grow brighter. In the sand outside, the storm began to rise again. The girl's skin glowed softly in the dark, and hidden beneath that light, the pattern on her arm shifted into something new. Not code, not design, it spelled a name, Elias. The first warning came as a low, deep vibration under the dome floor. Elias looked up from the scanner, his breath freezing in his chest. Outside, the air shimmered with light, bright beams cutting through the red horizon. They had found them. The Virion Syndicate ship dropped from the sky like a falling star. Its engines roared, sending waves of dust across the desert. The glass panels of the dome rattled. The girl, Eve, stood beside him, silent, her pale skin glowing faintly in the flickering light. Elias's hands shook as he shut down every power line he could. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "Don't move. Don't let them scan your heat." Eve tilted her head slightly, listening. "They have 3 trackers," she said softly. 2 humans. 1 drone." Elias blinked. "You can hear them?" She nodded. "They're signals. I can feel them in my head." Outside, the Syndicate team stepped from their shuttle. Men in black armor, helmets glowing with blue lenses. The lead officer spoke through a voice filter. "Scan the perimeter. Subject code Eve-07 detected in this sector." Elias swallowed hard. That number, 7, burned into his memory. He remembered the files. There had been 6 earlier prototypes. None survived. He turned to Eve. "We have to hide you." She shook her head slowly. "They will find me. They always find me. Not this time." Elias grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the back of the dome. He pressed a button on the wall. A small hatch slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel leading down beneath the sand. "Go," he said. "It leads to an old maintenance shelter." "I'll stall them." Eve hesitated. "They'll kill you." Elias forced a smile. "Maybe, but I've been dead inside for years. You deserve another chance." For a second, she looked at him with something new, something human. Fear mixed with sadness. Then she nodded and stepped into the tunnel. The hatch sealed behind her. Elias took a deep breath and grabbed his old plasma wrench. It wasn't a weapon, but it would have to do. Moments later, the door of the dome blasted open. Dust and smoke filled the room. 3 armored figures stepped in, weapons raised. "Elias Vorn," the lead soldier said. "By order of the Syndicate, you are under investigation for harboring stolen property." Elias glared at them. "Property? You mean her?" "She's not a machine." "She's a weapon," the soldier replied coldly. "Where is the prototype?" "I don't know what you're talking about." The soldier sighed. "Uncooperative, fine." He motioned to the others. "Search the structure." As they fanned out, Elias felt his pulse race. He had minutes, maybe seconds. He moved to the console, pretending to shut it down. But instead, he sent a coded pulse through the system, an overload that would short out the scanners for 60 seconds. A spark shot through the room. The soldiers' helmets flickered. "Signal interference," one shouted. Elias used the moment. He swung his plasma wrench, striking the nearest soldier's weapon, sending it clattering to the floor. The man turned, punching Elias in the stomach. Pain burst through his ribs, but he didn't stop. He grabbed a metal pipe and hit again. The lead soldier aimed his blaster. "Stop fighting, Vorn. You can't protect her." Elias spat blood, smirking weakly. "Watch me." Before the soldier could fire, the lights died completely. Darkness filled the dome. Then, a whisper. From the shadows, a faint silver glow appeared. The soldiers froze. "Where is that light coming from?" one asked. Eve stepped out from behind the machinery, her skin glowing brighter now, her eyes cold and calm. "You should not have come," she said softly. The soldiers raised their weapons. "Target located, engage!" But before they could shoot, the room's power grid came alive. Metal panels sparked, consoles exploded, and electricity danced along the floor. Eve raised her hand and the systems obeyed. The lead soldier screamed as his weapon overheated in his grip. Another was thrown back by a surge of energy. Elias watched in shock. "Eve, stop! You'll kill them!" She looked at him, eyes full of pain. "They never stopped killing us." The last soldier managed to fire once, and a plasma bolt grazed her shoulder. She stumbled, clutching the wound, her glow flickering. Elias ran to her side, pulling her down behind a metal crate. Outside, alarms from the syndicate ship blared. Reinforcements were coming. Elias looked at her wound. The skin around it shimmered, sealing slowly like liquid metal. "Can you walk?" "Yes," she whispered. "But they will not stop." He helped her up. "Then we run." They slipped out through the maintenance hatch and into the night. The desert wind roared again, carrying red dust across the dunes. Behind them, the dome burned, a collapsing shell of light and smoke. Elias looked back once, his home turning to ash. Then he turned toward the endless desert, where the horizon glowed faintly blue, the direction of the old mining canyons. Eve walked beside him, barefoot, silent. Her eyes watched the stars, and for a moment she looked almost peaceful. "Why didn't you kill them all?" Elias asked quietly. She whispered, "Because I wanted to remember what mercy feels like." He said nothing. The night stretched around them, vast, empty and full of danger, far above in orbit. The syndicate ship circled the planet, locking onto their signal. The hunt had just begun. The desert night stretched cold and endless. Two shadows moved across the dunes, Elias Vorn and the strange girl he once thought was human. The stars above Careen 9 were dim, hidden behind thin clouds of dust, and the air carried only the sound of wind and breath. They had been walking for hours since the syndicate attack. Elias's old dome was gone, burned down to twisted metal. Everything he owned, destroyed. But he didn't care about that now. The only thing that mattered was keeping her safe. Eve walked barefoot beside him. Her feet didn't seem to feel pain, though the sand was rough and cold. Her glowing skin had faded to a soft silver hue, faint and tired like a candle losing its flame. Elias finally stopped beside a cliff wall, an entrance to an old mining tunnel. "We'll rest here," he said. "It's abandoned. They won't find us for a while." Eve nodded but said nothing. She sat near the tunnel mouth and looked at the stars. Her eyes seemed distant, like she was watching memories float above her. Elias crouched near her, studying the wound on her shoulder from the battle. The strange metal-like skin had already healed, smooth as glass again. "You're lucky that shot didn't hit deeper," he said. "Whatever you're made of. It's stronger than anything I've seen." She looked at him slowly. "I'm not supposed to heal. The code was broken." "The code?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I wasn't finished when they made me." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" Eve turned away, pulling the blanket tighter around her. "They made me to copy someone. To carry a mind, not mine." His chest tightened. "Whose mind?" She stared at him. For a moment her gray eyes flickered silver again. "Yours." Elias froze. "What?" Her voice was soft, but the words cut deep. "You were one of the engineers who helped start Project Eve. They used your neural scans, your emotions, your memory patterns, your empathy. They said you were the perfect model. So they made me from you." He shook his head. "That's impossible." "I never—" "You did," she interrupted quietly. "Maybe you didn't know. But your mind built mine." The wind outside whistled through the canyon. Elias sat back, his heart pounding. He remembered signing test authorizations, approving data transfers, watching rows of simulation pods. He thought it was all theoretical, numbers and designs. But what if it wasn't? He looked at her again. "You're saying you're my copy?" Eve nodded slowly. "Half. The other half is machine. I feel what you felt, but I also hear things no human can. That's why they called me the hybrid mind. They said I could end the distance between man and machine." Elias stared at her, speechless. The girl sitting before him, the same one he rescued in the storm, was somehow part of him. She looked down at her hands. "When they tested me, I started to remember things that weren't mine. Your memories. A home near the sea." A woman's laughter. "The color of a sky from Earth." He swallowed hard. "That's my wife. She died years ago." Eve nodded. "I cried when I remembered her. But they said that was a malfunction. Machines shouldn't cry." Her voice cracked. "So they tried to erase me." Elias's hands clenched. Monsters. They didn't want a human machine, she whispered. They wanted a perfect slave. Silence filled the tunnel. Only the wind outside moved the air. Elias felt something strange stir in his chest. Guilt, sadness, and something like pride. He said softly, "You're not a slave, and you're not broken. You're proof that we can make something better, something alive." She looked at him confused. "Alive?" "Yes," Elias said. "Because you feel. Machines don't feel regret. They don't cry for people they never met." A single tear rolled down her cheek, glowing faintly before fading into her skin. "Then why does it hurt so much to exist?" Elias didn't answer. Instead, he moved closer and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Because that's what being human means." For the first time, Eve smiled, a small, trembling smile that made her look almost like a real girl. "Maybe I'm more human than they wanted me to be. Maybe you're more human than any of us ever were," he said quietly. But before she could reply, a sharp beep echoed through the tunnel. Elias's wrist scanner flashed red, a signal ping. "They've locked onto our trail again," he muttered. "They're tracking your signature." Eve closed her eyes. "Through my code. They left a key inside me. Can you stop it?" She looked at him sadly. "I can try. But if I do, I might erase part of myself too." Elias shook his head. "No, we'll find another way." "There is no other way," she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, engines breaking through the clouds. The syndicate was close. Eve stood, her skin glowing brighter, veins of silver light spreading across her body. "If I can cut the signal, they won't find us again. But I'll forget everything, and even you." Elias reached for her. "Eve, don't—" She touched his hand gently, her eyes soft. "You gave me life, Elias. Let me use it for something good." Before he could stop her, she closed her eyes and light burst from her body into pure, blinding and silent. When it faded, she collapsed into his arms, whispering one last word before darkness took her. "Thank you." Elias held her tightly, his eyes wet. Outside, the scanners went silent. The syndicate ships passed overhead unaware, but deep inside the tunnel, a faint silver light still pulsed under her skin, slow and steady like a heartbeat. She wasn't gone. Not yet. The next day, the world turned dark again. A storm was building, thicker and angrier than any before. The sky over Careen 9 swirled like fire and ash, lightning cracking through the clouds. Elias stood at the tunnel entrance, staring at the horizon. The wind screamed across the dunes, carrying dust like knives. His heart felt heavy, heavier than his pack of stolen tools and rations. Behind him, Eve lay on a mat, weak and pale, her glow dim. She had survived her code purge, but something was wrong. Her movements were slow, her eyes dull, her voice faint like a fading radio signal. Elias knelt beside her. "You're burning up," he said softly. "I'm not burning," she whispered. "I'm breaking." He clenched his jaw. "You saved us. You shut down their signal. You stopped them from finding us." She shook her head. "I didn't stop them. I delayed them." Elias froze. "What do you mean?" She turned her eyes toward him, eyes that once glowed silver now dimmed to gray. "They're still searching. I can feel their network pulsing through the planet. They'll reach us soon." He stood pacing. "Then we'll move. We'll go east across the canyon fields. There's a communications relay there. I can call for help." Eve's voice was weak. "No one will help you. They'll help them." Elias ignored her warning and packed supplies. "Then we'll steal a ship. I know an old landing site near the ridge. We can make it if we move now." He helped her stand. She trembled, unsteady. "You shouldn't carry me," she said softly. "I built machines heavier than you," he replied with a faint smile. "You'll be fine." They stepped out into the storm. The wind hit hard, blinding them. Elias wrapped his arm around her shoulders, guiding her forward. Every few steps, lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up her face and the cracks forming along her neck and arms. "Eve," he whispered. "Your skin, it's my system," she said. "It's collapsing. When I erased my code trace, I deleted part of my memory structure." "You can fix it," Elias said quickly. "Once we reach the relay, I can build something, rewire." She stopped walking.
"No, Elias," he turned to her.
The wind howled around them, throwing sand into their faces. Her expression was calm but sad. "I'm not meant to last," she said. "I was never meant to leave the lab." He gritted his teeth. You're not a failed experiment, Eve, you're alive. She smiled faintly. Alive amid such a strange word. They continued walking. The storm grew worse. The sky turned red and black and the ground shook under distant thunder. Hours passed. Elias could barely see the horizon when he spotted something. A small structure half buried in sand. An old hover transport, rusted but intact. He ran to it, brushing away dust from the controls. It might still work, he muttered. Eve leaned against the side, barely standing. You really think it'll fly? With luck, Elias said, tapping the power cell. To his surprise, the lights flickered on. Looks like luck's still with us, they climbed inside. The craft groaned as he started the engines. Sand blasted against the hull, shaking it violently. The thruster screamed, then lifted the transport slowly off the ground. Elias grinned. We're flying. But Eve didn't smile. She was staring out the window, her eyes wide. They found us. He looked up and his blood went cold. 3 dark shapes broke through the clouds. Syndicate drones, black and silver, flying fast. Their blue light scanned the desert below. Hold on, Elias shouted, jerking the controls. The hover transport dove low, weaving through the canyon ridges. Plasma beams sliced through the storm behind them, lighting up the sand in bursts of fire. Eve closed her eyes, her body glowing faintly again. I can block their aim for a few seconds. But it'll hurt. Do it, Elias said. Her skin lit up like lightning. The drone's sensors flickered, losing target lock. Elias turned sharply, diving into a narrow ravine. Rocks shattered around them, dust swallowing everything. Almost there, he shouted. Just a little farther. But then, one drone broke through the interference. It fired. The bolt hit the side of the transport, blowing out one engine. The ship spun wildly, crashing into the canyon floor. Elias was thrown hard against the control panel. Sparks flew everywhere. His vision blurred. Eve! He gasped. He looked around through smoke and dust. She wasn't in the seat. The back hatch was open. He stumbled outside into the storm, coughing. Eve! He shouted again. Through the red haze, he saw her standing a few meters away, barefoot, surrounded by swirling sand. The silver cracks on her body glowed brighter now, lightning dancing across her skin. Eve, come back, he yelled. She looked at him, tears mixing with the rain of dust. You said I was alive, she said softly. Now I'll prove it. Before he could move, she raised her hand toward the sky. The glow spread across her body like fire, bright, blinding. A pulse of energy burst upward, hitting the drones. They froze mid-air, their lights flickering, then dropped from the sky like falling stars. When the light faded, she collapsed to her knees. Elias ran to her, catching her before she hit the ground. Her breathing was slow, her skin dim again. Eve, he whispered. Stay with me. She opened her eyes weakly. Did it work? He nodded, tears in his eyes. You destroyed them. A faint smile touched her lips. Then maybe I was made for something after all. Her head rested against his chest. The storm raged around them, but Elias didn't care. He held her tightly, feeling her fading warmth. Far above, the sky cleared just enough for one star to shine through the cloud, bright and steady. Elias looked at it, whispering, I won't lose you. But deep inside, he feared he already had. The storm ended just before dawn. The sky above Careen 9 turned pale gold and the wind finally grew quiet. The desert was covered in fresh patterns of sand, smooth as water, hiding all traces of the fight. In the middle of that silent wasteland stood the broken hover transport, its hull cracked and smoking. Nearby, Elias Vorn sat in the sand holding Eve in his arms. Her body was still warm but faint, like the last ember of a dying fire. Her skin no longer glowed. The soft silver lines that once danced beneath her flesh were fading. She looked peaceful, almost human now, her eyes closed. Elias brushed the dust from her face, his voice trembling. Wake up, Eve, you did it. You stopped them. It's over. But she didn't move. He pressed his forehead against hers, whispering, Please, don't leave me now. A weak sound came from her lips, a whisper broken and fragile. It's never over. They'll rebuild. They always rebuild. Her eyes opened halfway, the gray irises dull but gentle. You should go, she said softly. There's a ridge north of here. You can cross it before sunrise. There's a beacon station. I'm not leaving you, Elias said. You have to, she breathed. I'm falling apart. My code's melting. I can feel it, he shook his head.
I can fix it.
No, she interrupted, her voice faint but sure. You can't fix something that was never meant to exist. Those words hit him harder than the storm ever did. He looked into her eyes, seeing himself reflected there. His creation, his guilt, his hope. She was made from his mind, his memories, his humanity, and now she was dying because of all of it. I made you suffer, he said. If I had never worked for them, no, she touched his cheek, her fingers cold but kind. You also made me feel, she whispered. You gave me something they never could. What's that? He asked, his voice cracking. She smiled faintly. A choice. For a moment the desert was silent. The wind stopped. Even the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, faintly, a sound rose in the distance, the deep hum of engines. Elias turned his head sharply. Over the dunes another ship was approaching, bigger than before, its shadow stretching across the sand. They found us, he said, his heart sinking. Eve didn't look afraid. She looked calm. Then I'll end it, she whispered. Elias grabbed her shoulders. No, you'll die. Her faint smile returned. I was never alive to begin with, he held her tighter. You're alive to me. Tears burned in his eyes. He couldn't let her go, not after everything. But Eve reached for his hand, pressing something small and metallic into his palm. A data core glowing faintly blue. What's this? My memory, she said. All that I am. If they erase me, you'll still have me here. Elias stared at the glowing chip, his heart breaking. Eve, she placed her hand on his chest. Promise me you'll keep living. Not hiding, not running, living. Before he could answer, her body began to glow again, brighter than ever before. But this time, it wasn't silver. It was pure white light, soft and radiant. Eve, stop! Elias shouted, shielding his eyes. She looked at him one last time, her voice gentle and clear. Goodbye, Elias. The light burst outward like a wave. The approaching syndicate ship froze mid-air, its engines flickering. Then, with a soundless flash, it exploded in the sky, scattering metal across the dawn. When the light faded, the desert was quiet again. Elias blinked through tears. The sand around him was scorched into glass. The hover transport was gone, and Eve was nowhere. Only a faint shimmer hung in the air like the last echo of a dream. Elias fell to his knees, clutching the glowing data core against his chest. You weren't supposed to exist, he whispered. But you did, and you changed everything. He looked up at the morning sky. The first rays of sunlight touched the desert, turning the broken world into gold. Somewhere above, a single star pulsed faintly, not part of any constellation. It blinked once, twice, then again like a heartbeat. Elias smiled through his tears. You're still here, he murmured. He stood, staring at the horizon. The wind picked up again, soft and warm, wrapping around him like a whisper. And for just a second he thought he heard her voice in it, quiet and kind. Thank you for finding me. Elias closed his eyes. The desert stretched before him, endless but no longer empty. He walked toward the rising sun, carrying the core close to his heart. Behind him, the wind erased his footprints, leaving only silence and light. And high above Careen 9, among the fading stars, a faint silver pattern began to flicker again. The same lines that once danced beneath her skin. A signal. A promise. Eve was not gone. She had become the light itself.